Hello, my name is Kayla Kelsey and I'm a candidate for the Promethean Education Consultant position with Minneapolis Public Schools. Today I'm going to walk you through how to connect your Mac to a Promethean Active Panel version 2. So in order to know if you have a version 2 of our Active Panel, you're going to want to look at the front panel of your board, and if it looks like this with the power button, menu, navigation arrows, and source button, you are working with a version 2. So what will you need? That's going to depend on whether or not you're working with an HDMI or a VGA cable. So the cables look similar, both have two of the same ends. The HDMI is going to be up here and then the VGA down here. The HDMI is the preferred way to connect your computer to the Active Panel, as the HDMI cable is going to provide you with both sound and video, whereas the VGA cable is going to be video only. Now if you're working with an HDMI cable, you're going to need a mini DisplayPort to HDMI adapter. And if you're working with a VGA cable, you'll need a mini DisplayPort to VGA adapter. Very similar. And then regardless, the second cable that you'll need is a USB cable, which goes USB to the Active Panel, and that is what enables the touch functionality of the board. So once you have your materials, step 1 is going to be to make sure that our board is plugged in and the power switch is flipped on. Step 2, I want you to make sure that the power button on the front panel is also pushed on. And you'll know that that's on if the light on the front of the board is green. If that light is red, that means that you do have power, but that you'll need to press that power button on the front. If you have no light at all, go back and make sure that your board is plugged in. Now, if you're connecting with HDMI, which is again our preferred method, you're going to start with your computer. And from there, you're going to connect this mini DisplayPort to HDMI adapter. So this piece connects to your Mac, and this piece connects to the HDMI cable. And then the HDMI cable is going to go from that connector to the board. The second set of cords is going to go your USB cable, which goes from the computer to the USB. And then this piece goes directly to the Active Panel. So you kind of have two different cords going from the computer. So now we'll take a closer look. So on the back of the Active Panel, again, you've got two cords coming out. So the HDMI cord, as I mentioned, is going to look like this on the end that it goes into the Active Panel. And then on the end that it goes into the computer, you're going to want to put that end into the port that has this little symbol attached to it. And so depending on what version of Mac computer you have, that might be located on a different side of the computer. Now we'll look at that USB touch port. So it's going to click right in here on the back of the board, and then on your MacBook it's going to go into any USB port, and so that's usually signified by this little USB symbol here. Now, if you're really lucky and you have this port, you actually don't even need to use that short white adapter. You'll just plug your HDMI directly into your computer. Now, if we're connecting with VGA, again, VGA is video only, so you're not going to have audio capabilities. It's going to be a similar process. So from the computer, you're going to have your mini DisplayPort, but this time it's to VGA. And then the VGA connection will go to a VGA cord, and then that cord will go directly into the Active Panel. Our second set of cords will go from the Mac to the USB cable, and then the other end of that will go directly into the Active board, exactly like with the HDMI setup. So if we look back here, that USB touch port is going to be exactly the same. It's going to be located on the back of the Active Panel, and then it's going to go directly into the USB ports on your computer, which again are labeled with the USB symbol. The piece that'll be a little bit different is that the VGA connection is located underneath your Active Panel, so it's going to be on the bottom side. And that's what that VGA port is going to look like. So you'll plug your VGA cable in there, And then, very similar to the HDMI adapter, it looks almost identical with an exception of this piece is different. And so you'll plug your VGA cable in here, and then the adapter will go into the very same port just as the HDMI cable did. Okay, so now that we've got all of our cords plugged in, both the mini display and the USB, to our computer and to the active panel, we have to check our display settings. And so you're going to go up to this top left corner to your Apple menu. You'll select that and drop down to System Preferences. From there, you're going to click on Displays. And when that opens up, you're going to want to click into the arrangement because you want to find out what your screen arrangement is. Now, the most important thing when using this active panel is that you have your displays mirrored. So the box is checked here, and you can see that it almost looks like there are two screens, one on top of one another, which is signifying that what's happening here on my laptop screen is also what's happening on the projected screen to my right. Now, if I unselect that, what will happen is we'll go into an extended view. So now, what I'm doing on my computer cannot be seen on the projected screen unless I move my mouse to the right off of my computer screen and onto the projected screen. So you'll see I'm able to drag screens back and forth. And now this looks a little bit different, right? You don't see that mirrored box checked, and instead of having one screen on top of one another, you'll see two screens. This one on the left kind of signifies my desktop or my laptop screen and what I'm doing there, and then on the right hand side, this is signifying the projected image that my students are seeing. So what can be nice about this is you can have one screen open like a BBC article or a Kahoot game, and you can drag that over and have that be what your viewers are seeing, but then also have something like attendance or assignment grades open on the computer, and you're not sharing that with everybody. So if we click back into mirrored display, now again what you're seeing is exactly what I see on my laptop screen. And so for the purposes of this, you again want to make sure that you're in Apple System Preferences. Let's try closing that. I lost a box, so let's try it again, System Preferences. And then from there, Displays, Arrangement, and just making sure that that box is checked to mirror your display. So once your cables are connected, if there's still something that's not quite right, like you go to touch your board in one place and the cursor pops up in another, your active panel may need to be calibrated. So what we're going to do is go to the top right corner of our MacBook and look for the active driver icon. So it's going to be right near the time, volume, and battery capacity of the computer. There's going to be this little active driver icon. You're going to select calibration. And then if you are trying to get it calibrated pretty quickly, you can choose 5 points, or if you have time to more precisely calibrate the board, you're going to select 25 points. Once you select that calibration, you're going to get a screen that looks like this. It's going to be full of little X's, and the idea is for you to point your finger or the Promethean pen right in the center of each one of those X's in order to calibrate the board. A few other things to remember. If you're having an issue with the touch capabilities, the problem is going to be with the USB connection. So first check the connection on your computer, and then check the connection on the back of the active panel. If you're having an issue with no image, that's going to be a problem with either the HDMI or the VGA cable. So again, you're going to check first the connection to the computer, then you're going to make sure that those adapters are nice and secure, and then you're going to check either the connection to the back of the panel or the bottom of the panel, depending on which cord you're using. A few other things before you head out. I want you to just go over what's on the front of the panel. So again, you've got your power button, which we went over, your source button, which is going to allow you to switch between VGA and HDMI, depending on what you're using. You have a set of navigation arrows, which are going to help you select through your menu items. So if you click Source and you want to switch between VGA or HDMI, you'll use the navigation arrows and then you'll use the menu button to select. You have similar buttons plus some additional on the remote. You'll have a power button, you'll have your navigation arrows, and this time you'll have an OK button to select. You're able to adjust your volumes. Your source button is here in the middle. The menu button is here up on the right. And then you have a freeze screen button, which if you push that, it'll temporarily pause whatever the students are seeing on your display screen, but allow you to continue functioning on your computer. So with all that, I think you're ready to go. I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me.